Hello, everybody. Wow, do I have a really cool episode today. We're going to be talking about real estate. And my guest is, you could say he's an expert in the field. I'm going to tell you why. His group, since forming, has done over $2.5 billion in transactions. That's a big number. And on top of that, they continue to do about $500 million a year. They do little deals, but boy, does Carl Gambino, my guest from the Gambino team, have one heck of a roster of rock star clients across the board. So welcome, Carl.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So,
And
wow, real estate. How'd you get into real estate?
I think I didn't like, or I know, I didn't like school. And I was always obsessed with real estate and architecture. As young as I can remember, I used to walk around Soho. My grandmothers were from Soho and in the village and look at townhouses. And I think really early on, I kind of associated real estate with wealth building as well. And even when I was in high school, I would have friends that were older than me drive me around to look at like mansions in New Jersey. And it's just
Mhm.
something I've always been drawn to.
So, you mentioned wealth building. Tell me about your thoughts between real estate and the idea of wealth building.
I mean, it's what I know and live and breathe, and it's what I personally invest in. And I didn't, I started from pretty much nothing. And so
Mhm.
I look at real estate as an incredible hard asset that if you're buying the right asset, location, property, it's always appreciating. It should be cash flowing in a great way, and it's a long-term wealth builder, and it's a safe asset if you're doing it correctly.
You said something interesting, a cash flow. Are you working with people that are buying real estate for their homes or as investments or a combo of both?
A combination of both, but basically, we have a rare business where we do New York, LA, Miami, the Hamptons, the North Fork, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And we've built an advisory for residential real estate wherever our clients go. We do, as you said, we do some deals for $1 million. We do deals like I'm about to list something for 100 and something million. So we do every single spectrum of deal. Our primary main focus is residential real estate.
Mhm.
And some clients are buying homes for themselves and their families. Other clients are buying homes they want to rent out. We have done some multifamily deals, but that's not our specialty. So it's a real combination of both. I would say a bigger portion of our clientele are buying homes for themselves to live in, which they are also looking at as assets.
You mentioned a lot of areas. Can you repeat all the areas you're in? Because as far as location wise, because I'd really like to understand the differences across the country in those different pockets from New York to LA to Pennsylvania. I mean, certainly New York City is different than the Hamptons. So, what are you observing? First,
So
where
we
are you? Repeat where you are.
right now I'm in New York City, and this is one of the markets we do. We do New York, LA, Miami, the Hamptons, the North Fork of Long Island, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. We've been doing a few things throughout Pennsylvania, but Bucks County specifically is where we
Mhm.
started.
I love it there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And the reason we do so many markets is because what I wanted to build was an advisory for our clients, because a lot of our clients, especially higher end clients, they would have a Los Angeles home, a New York apartment, a Hamptons estate, a place in Miami, and we wanted to be an advisory to them. And I've personally moved around the country, lived in all of the markets we've worked in except for the PA market, which I've been studying and going to a lot. I'm licensed in every market. I've bought and sold real estate in most of the markets that we work in. And then we've hired agents in each market who are a complete extension of us. And I basically am involved in pretty much every deal and negotiate as well. And as
Mhm.
you said, I have a unique perspective in the sense where I understand and know what's going on in each market, so I can talk
Mhm.
further to that if you'd want.
I would love to hear it. What are you observing are the hot spots, the cool spots, the let me get out of here spots, or let me get there spots in your realm?
I mean, right now there's a lot of press that people are leaving New York to go to Florida. I mean, I can tell you, that is in some capacity, some are leaving, but there's just as many coming.
I
And
agree with that.
we have 20 something deals in contract in Manhattan and Brooklyn. Like there's nothing slowing it down. New York has had a complete incredible resurgence and it's just amazing and has an incredible energy right now, in my opinion.
Where do you
Um,
think the pockets are in New York City, or is it in general?
I mean, most of the clients that we work with either buy in the West Village, the Northwest pocket of Tribeca. We've had a huge amount of clients buy in the prime areas of Brooklyn, Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, Park
Mhm,
Slope.
mhm,
There's a bunch of emerging areas in Brooklyn. The Upper East Side, as close to the park as possible,
mhm,
is highly desirable, and then the Upper West Side, as close to the park as possible. West Chelsea has done really well. We're doing
mhm,
multiple deals there right now, kind of all over the city. There's just different pockets for obviously different types of buyers and sellers. In terms of the Hamptons has had a big resurgence very recently in higher end deals like 10 million plus within the last few months. The
mhm,
North Fork, the reason we went there is because we've just had so many incredibly interesting, cool, artistic clients that are buying there, and the
mhm,
prices are kind of rapidly emerging. And it's just awesome. I
mhm.
love the
It's
North
really
Fork.
pretty. I love the North. I'm a North Fork fan.
Yeah, yeah, it's really nice. Like I stayed there for not this August, the August before with my family, and we absolutely loved it. We own a house in Sag Harbor.
Mhm,
Miami, as you probably know, since COVID has had an incredible rapid appreciation and growth in kind of every
mhm,
area and sector. Miami's a very small place and there's a few prime pockets, so the
mhm,
pricing in those prime pockets has just gone through the roof.
mhm,
I've personally invested and bought there, and we have a lot of clients still moving there, and it's
mhm,
become a full-time city. Obviously, there were always people that lived there full-time, but it was
mhm.
much more a second home city, and
Right.
now it's just become so much more as like people are just moving their families. The schools are rapidly growing. There's actually schools being added. There's huge infrastructure and companies being built there, and it's really exciting.
Hmm. What do you think is the underlying factor for the different trends for a neighborhood to start to percolate and become hotter?
Well, there's an old saying like follow the artist. Where the artists go is what you do, and that's just been true in every sense since I have been working in real estate in Los Angeles, like the east side of LA.
Mm,
Artists moved there, and then it exploded. In parts of Brooklyn, Soho back in the day, all the East Village, and all even Miami, the emerging parts of Miami, like Alapata and Wynwood and
mhm.
all of those areas, they were started by artists too. So that's one of the best factors to look at is follow the artist.
That is so funny you say that because I often say to my husband, I just my next neighborhood's gonna have the best graffiti. I'm moving towards the
It's
graffiti
yeah, that's
because
that's a
it seems to be where you get the bargain, and then you can have the upside.
yeah, I mean, of course there's things to look for. Like when I'm investing, I'm looking for job growth? Are there
Mhm.
universities nearby?
Yeah.
What restaurants are coming? What infrastructure is going there? Like where are young entertainment people hanging out? Because then that spreads things viral these days. Like there's an area in the city, in New York City called Dime Square, which is kind of where Chinatown meets the Lower East Side, which in the last few years has unbelievably exploded to the point where I've been taking many developers down there and saying they need to build residential projects because there's only been one or two in the absolute like prime pocket of that neighborhood, and I think there's incredible demand.
It's really funny you say that because I just recently said I wanted to move to that area. I saw a multi-story building, like, I think it was 4 floors, and I'm like, "That's what I'm envisioning right now. I'll put our kids in one, our kids in another, we'll move in."
Yeah,
Like,
no, I've
create
been
this family compound
we've
in
been
some funky
getting
neighborhood.
yeah, we've been getting requests from people from all over the world like for downtown in that area, and some of them are incredibly wealthy families, entertainment people. It's exploding.
Mhm. It's fascinating. And you know what else? When you said dime square, it always cracks me up, particularly in New York City real estate, where you'll have, the names shift and change, the boundaries shift and change based on the value of the property or how someone wants to change it. Like, from Hell's Kitchen to becoming Lower Hell's Kitchen, or the Garment Center becoming Hudson Yards, or,
Yeah.
Hudson Yards East. It's so funny the different ways that New York City names its neighborhoods.
Yeah, my grandmothers live on McDougal and Prince, and my dad and my mom grew up there. And they call it the Village still, but it's Soho because it's technically one block south of Houston. I mean, my grandmothers are 90, and but they
You're not
don't,
changing it for
yeah,
them.
they don't consider it Soho. I mean, and still, if I'm going to like Alphabet City and I tell my grandmothers, they're like, "Oh no, don't go there," and they don't realize like how it's gentrified.
Yeah. What do you think the factors are for the changing dynamics in neighborhoods?
I think a little bit of what I mentioned, definitely the restaurant scene, the bar
Mhm,
scene. What I've been seeing in New York City and Miami and even LA is emerging art galleries are changing neighborhoods. Like there's a gallery called 56 Henry that my friend owns. She's an amazing art dealer.
mhm,
She kind of was one of the people to originally spearhead putting emerging galleries in the area near Dime Square, and now there's a bunch of them. And the city is actually like sectored off in the sense where like the emerging galleries are mostly downtown. Then like the mid galleries are kind of have all went into Tribeca, and then the high end galleries are all in West Chelsea or uptown.
mhm. Now you have uh you're selling some high dollar properties. Yes, as we talked about, you'd sell $1 million property, but you've gotten involved with some pretty high dollar properties. How did you move your real estate practice from selling or rentals, where a lot of people start, or selling, try to get that studio sale, which is still $1 million these days in New York.
Yeah.
But how'd you move yourself up the food chain in real estate?
I'm very into self-development material. I've been studying it for the better part of, I don't even know, 15 or 20 years. I read constant self-development books, listen to podcasts, biographies. I write my goals out. I like had specific plans to constantly elevate in the business. I'm very much of the belief like if you exercise your mind and feed it like positive material, that you can grow it just as if you were going to the gym and exercising. It's kind of like the gym for your mind, even if it sounds cheesy. And I had intention, and I basically on a daily basis would obsess about it, write these goals out, go out 7 days a week, and constantly focus on elevating, attracting certain types of clients, going to events, wherever I could to put myself in the correct environments. And I remember like I sold something for $1 million in the beginning of my career, and it was like life-changing, mind-blowing. And then it was 5 million or 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. If I recently sold something for 57 million. Like, we just sold another house for 54. We're listing a few things over 100. Like it's and I still do the same processes on a daily basis, and it's
Mhm.
allowed me to constantly elevate my business. And I think that's important, not just in real estate, for any business, and especially sales, because it's a mind game.
It's a mind game. Let's talk about that. That's a good starter.
I think, or I know, it's a mind game in the sense where you can do these things, or you can hit your goals, especially at an ultra high level, if you believe you can. And I think doing the exercise over and over again for your mind allows you to constantly elevate and believe that you can achieve these things. And some people I think are born that way. And I've luckily at this point, or fortunately, been around many of the most successful people in the world in various industries because my job allows me to touch all of them. And it's really awesome. And one of my favorite parts of my job, that I get to spend time on a daily basis with a lot of the most interesting people in the world. And what I've observed from them is some of them were born that way and they just believe that they can do anything. And I wasn't. I
Mhm.
came from a loving, amazing kind of Italian background, but more where they were like, look, get any job, like
Mhm.
work is scarce in that sense. And that was just, I think, because they immigrated from Italy and that was their concept, to
Mhm.
where like abundance or even what I'm doing now is just not where I came from. So
Mhm.
I would say that um so I've become beyond obsessed with this type of material and changing my mindset and spending time with the people I was mentioning. I've observed that some are either born that way or some are like me where they discover it in their own right and then they do the exercises or work.
Do you coach the team members that you gather into
Yeah,
this mentality, or do you recruit them because they have that mentality, or a
a,
combo?
a combo of both, but one of the main recruiting factors of our team are people that are willing to do that or believe in the same type of beliefs we have and that can develop and be an extension of us. And I can tell you the ones on the team that do it and they do that practice,
Mhm.
they have doubled and tripled their business.
Mhm.
And it's something that I really enjoy doing. And that's how I've recently, in the last few years, I've started publicly speaking more, doing podcasts. I'm writing my own book, and it's just something that's incredibly fulfilling.
Mhm.
And I feel like if I got to where I am, and I feel that I'm just beginning, that I've learned incredible stuff that I can help some other people with. So that's awesome.
I have a question for you. Over like my 20 years of owning an investor relations firm, I helped companies raise about $1 billion. And I found when companies would come to me and someone would say, well, I need $1 million to get this off the ground. Or another company would say, well, I need $50 million to get this off the ground. And it always surprised people, but I'd say, it's just as hard or just as easy, depending on how you want to look at it, to raise a million or 50 million, but often it's easier to do the 50 million. What do
That's
you think in real estate?
that's such an amazing point because that's something I tell our agents all the time that sometimes doing $1 million deal is harder than doing a $50 million deal.
Yeah.
And it is the same exact job.
Mhm.
Obviously, you're dealing with a different personality in that sense, but I completely agree with you. And that's something that we talk to our agents very frequently about. And it's just the value of money changes at
Mhm.
higher levels. And not all big deals are easy, of course, but
Right.
I've done some larger transactions that were within days. Like I sold a house for 24 million once I think it was an 11-day deal,
Mhm.
where I've done $1 million deals where I'm working on them for 6 months and sometimes they fall apart. And
Mhm.
the same happens at every level, but I couldn't agree with you more.
I I always wonder why that is. Do you have any guesses on that? I mean, as you said, to some degree, the value of money changes. But I also wonder, is it the value of money and also the time factor that when you get to the level where you're trying to get a greater return, you're also very focused on, I only have X minutes in a day. I only have X number of hours or X possibly days in a lifetime. So I need to get the best return on my time. And the money factor ties into that. So if I'm spending too long focusing on this versus something bigger, it's a time factor that ties into money.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like
Mhm.
I did one deal once for 54, I believe, and the person was like, I have no time to even talk about this. Like, get this done and get it to the finish line. And it's true. Like, that person could make millions of dollars probably per day. And
Mhm.
they, so yes, I think that's a factor of it. I think even I see it myself, like as I elevate and climb in my business, like my
Mhm.
days are so segmented and filled,
Mhm.
and have to like really focus my time and spend it properly because if you're not, you're losing money at that point.
Let's talk about that. What's a typical day for Carl Gambino? I'm sure there is no typical day, but let's try to pretend there is one.
No,
What are
I
the
mean,
things that are the must-dos during the day?
I try to wake up. Well, I usually wake up way earlier
Trying
than
to wake up is always
it. No, I mean early, way earlier than anyone in my house. I immediately put on one of like the self-development books, podcasts, biographies, the things that I was mentioning. And I do that purposely to start my day with like good intention before reading anything. I try not to read negative news or anything like
Mhm.
that. I make coffee, I drink like 400 shots of espresso, and then I during that period read my goals out loud, like all the goals. It's really detailed. I try to write a gratitude list and I send it to like a few friends. And then I meditate, at least try to meditate for 5 minutes, which is kind of like manifestation, like seeing myself in possession of the goals. What would it be like there? Like very, very like as vivid as I can.
Mhm.
And then from there, I have breakfast with my kids, get dressed, and then I immediately start working. And
Mhm.
then work varies per day. Like I sometimes I'm flying across the country to show someone, sometimes I'm you know, nonstop, just phone calls all day. Most days I am showing property and I'm pretty much on the phone from the second I wake up till very late at night, especially because of Los Angeles. So
Mhm.
sometimes I'm walking in circles in front of my house, like until midnight if I'm in New York, and it's sometimes when I'm in LA, I'm waking up really early to have calls. So Miami, the same thing as New York, obviously, but
Mhm.
that's there was a time I remember when I lived in Miami, I would literally it was so hot in the summer that I usually would stand outside and make calls and I couldn't stand outside. I would sit in my car with the air condition on. But the so that's kind of a typical day, but it varies. Like sometimes it's like I said, I could out of nowhere get a last minute message and have to fly across the country or
Mhm.
just run uptown in New York or wherever I am and be in a showing like a super interesting person or an amazing property.
Is there a theme to what makes a property amazing?
I think everyone has their own opinion on properties.
Mhm.
That's one thing I've learned is being able to adapt and appreciate all types of properties because, it's kind of like art where it can be
Mhm.
subjective. There's definitely like specifics that, the entirety would like, but
Mhm.
it varies per property. Like in New York City, for instance, townhouses that are wider, like width of townhouse and large scale with high ceilings, obviously lots of light in LA, we've sold many incredibly like unbelievable architectural homes that are,
Mhm.
famous architects, case study architects. LA is very oriented on view, like,
Mhm.
land, space, privacy. The Hamptons, land, space, architecture. Miami can be properties on the water. So I think it varies obviously where you are.
Mhm. It's always funny when I think of New York City, I think how much people value a terrace
Yeah,
or
or outdoor
a
space.
12 by 12 garden in their backyard
It's so
or a
true.
brick wall. It's like, wow, this my new apartment has a brick wall.
Yeah, no, it's so true. We always tell our clients like you have to make a list of, especially in rentals, but in you have to make a list of everything you want, and then we're gonna show you many variations, and like it's very rare, no matter how much money you spend, to get absolutely everything on the list. So you have to pick the highest variation of that.
Yeah, it's that compromise in life. We're always figuring out the ways to compromise to get what we want. So, speaking of getting what we want, you want to have a great team around you. A great team helps you grow as a leader, helps you do a lot of the other things you want to do. You talked about having a team that can envision and will do the work to envision their success. What are key characteristics you think are traits of someone who could be successful with the Gambino team?
I think humility is one of the most important things for us. Like
That's
that.
very interesting you say that, Carl, because you know what? You know what? I I, I told you I know your father. When when I met your father, you know what I said to him? I said, "Carl has a fascinating humility about him."
Oh, that's thank you. That's
And
really
and I
nice.
that's like the ultimate compliment I think you can give someone.
Yeah,
It
no,
is
I
really
completely agree.
charming. It's a charming aspect of your nature.
Well, thank you for that. And that's
Yeah.
something we really look for in team members. And I
Mhm.
feel that you have to have humility and be open to learning. And this is a business, which is also why I love it. Like, I literally learn new things on a
Every
daily
day.
basis, even though I'm doing this 7 days a week into the
Mhm.
ground. And having humility, I think, is incredibly important. Having a really strong work ethic,
Mhm.
availability, because to be successful in the real estate business, you have to constantly be available to clients, and
Mhm.
you have to be willing to sacrifice too. Like, I can't
Mhm.
tell you how many times I wish I was, eating dinner with my children, but I'm,
Mhm.
out with a client. I mean, of course, I love the business and I love the clients, but
Mhm.
you have to be willing to sacrifice. And those are the main factors really that we look for, and then we speak to them, and it's also gut. If they have
Mhm.
some success, obviously that's incredible. Like, we look for a
Mhm.
certain. At this point, we've developed a complete system of an Addie. There's a woman named Addie Dorsey who runs the company, who's unbelievable, who's a co-founder of mine. Like, she helped me build the Gambino group from the inception, and she was on maternity leave. She's coming back Monday, and I can't wait. Um, but having an incredible staff is so important too. Like, we've been so fortunate. Our entire staff in each market, we've attracted such wonderful people who work really hard and are honest, like, hardworking people, and that's something that I find is like the backbone, obviously, of the entire business.
What do people who reach out to you and say, "Carl, I wanna work with you and your team," where do they get it right, that opening statement, and where do they get it wrong?
I think it just depends, like, per person, but I've had people who I have heard me speak recently who emailed and were like, "Hey, I heard you speak. Please send me whatever books you're talking about. It was helpful or motivating.
Mhm.
I do real estate. It's my, like, pure passion. I've been doing it." And then basically breaking down what they do and how
Mhm.
they do it. And of course, that's something that is, like, so nice to hear and interesting. And that's a good approach. Like, I had someone who joined our team maybe a year and a half ago who's amazing and is willing to do all of this stuff and has doubled and tripled her business and says that I can always talk about it,
Mhm.
but who had their own team and they were like, "Hey, I want to start doing a higher price point and I want to elevate and I want to do what you're doing and I want to learn what you're doing," and folded their own team and joined us. And
Mhm.
that was, an honor to be where someone was like, "I'm gonna do this to work with you," and it's gone incredibly. We talk pretty much every morning super early, and it's, like, so fun and motivating. And that's one thing I didn't originally imagine my business growing to the point where I'm training or working with people on a daily basis, and that's really awesome. I did this one episode of a show with A-Rod years ago on
Uh-huh.
CNBC, and I'm not like one of these people who wants to be on Million Dollar Listing or any of those shows. It's, like, completely different than me.
Mhm.
But after we did that episode, we had a lot, and I now know that this is why I was meant to do the episode, that, like, we had brokers start reaching out to us from all over the country wanting to join, and that's kind of how we started to build the team.
Mhm. What do you think the biggest challenges are facing real estate ownership right now?
It depends on the client, but the
Mhm.
rates, I mean, the rates are still fairly high. I mean, historically they're not, but what we're used to in the last few years.
See,
So,
that's the part that throws me off because my first apartment that I bought in New York was at 12.99%,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
and that was
I,
1987,
yeah,
right before the stock market crashed.
no, I know, but the last few years, like, obviously the rates were incredibly low. So, but just from where basically the rates have risen and pricing hasn't dropped enough from an investment standpoint to where you can buy easy cash flowing assets because the rates
Mhm.
are higher and then the price points are still higher. So I think from an investment standpoint, you got to really hunt for deals that cash flow well, and it becomes harder in the more prime markets, like buying in New York. New York City can also be hard with rental laws and, rent stabilization. So you have to just be really careful per state, understanding the laws of each state. California can be similar. But I think it just depends where you're buying. Like I said, in a lot of the markets, there's a supply and demand issue for prime properties because
Mhm,
there's small segments of areas. Like New York, also, you have to know what you're doing and be advised correctly. One thing I find in my business that's interesting is because I deal with such incredibly successful people in all other sectors, of the universe,
mhm,
and some of them are really, adversed in real estate, have bought and sold many homes, but they're not in the weeds doing it 7 days a week like I am because they don't have time to. So I'm so of the belief that you need real guidance and an excellent agent because it's really easy to buy incorrectly, even if you're incredibly experienced in another field. And New York City in the last 10 years, there's been kind of like flat appreciation. And so, like, pretty often we're selling properties that people bought 10 years ago and they're like barely getting out alive. Like, that seems to be changing now. So,
mhm,
like, New York, you have to make sure you're buying in pedigree buildings, that the buildings that they're managed correctly, that there's some sort of interesting factors about the building that will help you with appreciation, that they're in the right location. Because New York, you're always facing someone could build a bigger, better building with a lot of units down the street, except for select areas. Like there's a building called 80 Clarkson that is incredible. It's a phenomenon. We've been doing a bunch of stuff there. It's in the
mhm,
West Village on Clarkson. They spent 10 years acquiring air rights, so it's the absolute tallest building in the West Village. And it's going to be 40-ish plus stories and it has the most unparalleled views from every sector, and they're being able to defy pricing. They're selling units for 6,000 a foot. Um, but that's an area like that building is very, it's very unique. So
mhm.
that's a great building. So if you're buying in LA, for instance, there's pockets of LA where I think it's really important, like to know the difference from each pocket and how to invest in LA. The same in
Mhm.
Miami. So I think even now I'm going on a tangent, but
No,
but
not
the
at all, because I actually want you to expand on this, and here's my preface to your expansion. Um, Street Easy has come under fire for a lot of things, in that, it's kind of the disintermediation in some ways of the real estate agency world. Properties are listed up at Street Easy, and if you don't do it in X amount of time, then you have different issues. So that's a whole conversation in itself. Real estate is, it's kind of like PR in a way, in that as soon as somebody loses their job in one area, they often say, "Oh, well, I'll become a PR agent." It
yeah.
doesn't mean you're good. And it's the same thing with real estate. It's a low barrier to entry if you can get someone to, you know, uh, hold your license for you. What is the value? Why should someone hire a real estate agent today and commit their property to a single person when in fact they could do something like a street easy? What would be your rationale to them?
Well, I think first of all, you have to be hiring the correct real estate agent, but
Mhm. What makes
it's
the
kind
person the correct one?
knowledge, the ability to sell, that they're going to
Mhm,
hustle for you, that they're going to get you the absolute highest price, that
mhm,
they're going to guide you correctly. Because sometimes also sellers they're not aware, they think properties are worth more than they are, and then they end up overpricing them sitting and then ending up at a lower number from
yeah,
a buying perspective, like I was talking about buying correctly. But it's just like almost any other industry, but people, as you said, they don't understand because it is a low barrier to entry and there's tons of real estate agents, obviously.
mhm,
So we get a bad name in that sense. But it's literally like, would you go to do your own teeth or you would go to a dentist? Like,
mhm.
would you do your own law or you go to a lawyer? Like maybe those are cheesy analogies, but it's
No,
the
they're good.
most.
They're good. I mean, and I used to say to people when I would quote my fees for PR, I would say, "Listen, you can drive a Honda or you could drive a Ferrari. They're both gonna get you there, and you're gonna pay more, but this is the reason why you're gonna pay more if we're going to do what we're doing."
Yeah,
You're there's a certain level of expertise that I believe certain people bring to the game. I'm trying to define, how does someone define that and differentiate themselves with that?
Uh, Learning the data, having
Hmm.
unbelievable market knowledge, that's something I tell all my salespeople because if you know the data, you're confident even in the beginning of your career. Even if you have no business, you are an expert by knowing the data, so you feel
Hmm.
that you deserve business.
Hmm.
I think there's many variations to make you an excellent like real estate agent in the business, but having the, like I said, having the ability to sell, knowing the data, knowing what's correct for you to do, giving you the proper advice, but it's an industry that gets a bad name, and it's to me it's mind blowing that you would take your most important asset, or usually one of people's most important assets, not everyone, and just put it in the hands of some website, or like it's a very personalized thing too. And there's an art of negotiating, there's an art of selling, and I can tell you people I've heard throughout the years of my career, they're like, "Oh, you just open doors." Like I work 7 days a week. I like
Hmm.
there's an unbelievable amount of, like I said earlier, sacrifice, time, energy, and it's not just you're opening the door or something that like a robot can do, in my opinion. Like you should have an excellent advisor, and especially with an asset of this class. Just
Hmm.
as when I'm investing in, stocks or an area that I'm not adversed in, I'm giving it to a wealth advisor, like one of
Hmm.
the top wealth advisors, because I don't know what I'm doing, and I would never just go and risk my assets by in an area I'm uneducated.
Great points. Great points. What um what do you see the future of real estate and the direction things will keep going? Obviously interest rates will impact things, but what are other factors?
One thing that's really exciting, especially for me, is just the pricing of real estate.
Mhm.
It's beyond it's beyond what you could have imagined years ago.
Mhm.
Like now, $100 million purchase price is fairly common in the highest end markets of America,
Mhm.
where that was like a one-off thing, even a decade ago. So I
Mhm.
think pricing will keep surging. I think certain pockets will keep, like the West Village is a good example where historically the wealthiest people that were buying in New York City, a huge portion of them wanted to live in the Upper East Side as close to the park as possible. And there was a certain kind of pedigree of wealth that would never live downtown.
Mhm.
Now, like I was telling you, there's buildings, or we sold a townhouse on West 12th for 23 million, almost 5,000 a foot, no elevator, 4,800 square feet. So the and we sold something in, for instance, in Truesdale in Beverly Hills for 6,000 a foot and broke the record. We sold something on Fisher Island and broke the record per foot. In these prime areas, the pricing is climbing and I believe like they're incredible hard assets to invest in, where they will keep appreciating, and the pricing will keep climbing. So I think that's one trend. And I
Mhm.
think it's interesting how areas like the West Village are now starting to become as expensive, if not more expensive than, prime Upper East Side or other historic areas. So as younger buyers generate wealth, I think they're changing, area. Even Brooklyn Heights is another example. Like a few years ago, Brooklyn Heights is I think it is the oldest suburb in America. And
Mhm.
it's always been beautiful and historic and tree-lined wide streets and highly desirable. But there was a different buyer that would buy in Brooklyn Heights than, let's say, the West Village. Now people are coming to us and they're like, "Oh, I'll buy a townhouse in the West Village or Brooklyn Heights." And then what's happening in Brooklyn Heights is Cobble Hill, the next area, which is also beautiful and prime, where some Brooklyn Heights buyers wouldn't buy in, they're now going to Cobble Hill because you're getting more, space and more for your money. Then Cobble Hill buyers are now going into Carroll Gardens, and it just
Mhm.
keeps pushing, and it keeps pushing the pricing in that capacity. So pricing is one thing that I see as a trend.
I, I
And
want to I want to talk about that because it's interesting. Today I read some commentary that I think it could have been Peter Thiel said something along the lines of explaining different things that are happening across the country. And he was saying real estate is pricing people out. You're saying this is an asset and it's going to continue to climb. So, who are those buyers? We're in a world where AI is a threat. and you're seeing every day that, or maybe it's not a threat, it could be an opportunity, because I live in the world of perhaps. I have no idea what's going to happen. So I just say, perhaps it'll be good. Perhaps, I have no idea. So I always try to find the positive side of the perhaps. But you hear people, news headlines every day saying real estate's too high. What counts as too high? How do we explain, $1,000 a square foot versus 5,000 a square foot? What are those factors that go into that, do you think? And will
Well,
shift those trends.
I think so there in the last, however, let's say 5, 10 years, there's been incredible wealth generated in all sorts of areas. And I've personally dealt with many people who are young that have incredible wealth, that are
Mhm,
generating wealth through AI, crypto,
mhm,
technology faster than ever.
mhm,
And those, and by the way, I deal with, all sorts of age groups in terms of
mhm,
buying. Like I represent, 80-year-old people and I represent
mhm,
20-year-old people. But I, so I think there's a new level of wealth that's been generated that's driving the pricing.
mhm,
I think, inflation and the cost of things has driven the people who are actually making money to make more money because there's an
mhm,
inability to afford things. And it's not untrue that in these pockets that they are pushing, out the lower, like the middle class is now even it's hard to buy your first
mhm,
home, which but I don't in terms of who those buyers are, it's a variation. It's really, tech entrepreneurs, entertainers,
mhm,
billionaires, hedge fund managers. Those are the people buying at that level, people exiting companies. There's a lot more people who, start companies, work in the companies for 5 to 7 years and exit for $1 billion. And
mhm.
then those people are buying prime real estate.
What is the secondary home market looking like in your experience right
The
now?
secondary home market is always, of course, more volatile, but
Mhm.
like I said, the Hamptons is primarily a secondary home market, and I've seen an uptick very recently.
Have you
Um,
seen the secondary home market of the Hamptons becoming the primary home market, with people saying, "Oh, I'm going to make sure I live 6 months, you know, 6 months in a day out in the Hamptons, even though my business, let's say, is in New York City."
I mean, not so much. I see more people doing that in Florida.
Uh-huh.
Um, but the Hamptons, definitely people moved there during COVID, but
Mhm.
it's still more of a secondary home market for sure. The Florida, I have seen more as primary homes. Like I said earlier, there is a huge amount of people who have moved to Florida. I've also seen people move to Florida then move back to New York. Los
Mhm.
Angeles has a huge, huge portion of people, or a huge amount of people in Los Angeles buy primary homes and live there. But it's interesting, especially on the high end. It's a strong secondary market. Like we have properties that we've sold or are selling, 20 to 70 million that are second to 10th homes for people.
What makes that secondary home market volatile?
Just the variation of the market, because if it's a secondary home, then, those are getting harder hit than primary where people need to live.
Uh-huh. Is that in, like, if they lose their job or if their income changes, they need to get rid of that secondary home
Yeah, that's the first
faster?
thing. Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
One thing I've also noticed is even let's say from the sector of 1 million to 5 million, I am seeing, and this is part of our business as well, bi-coastal purchasers where they have
Mm.
a home in LA and an apartment in New York, or an apartment in Miami and an apartment in New York. Like I've seen
Mhm,
that even if they have a house for, let's say, 1.7 million in LA and $2 million in the city. So it's not just the ultra wealth that do that. But that's
mhm,
something that I've noticed since COVID too, is like obviously people can work more remotely, so they're kind of moving around a lot.
mhm. I'm sure you saw the movie The Big Short.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Um, any factors in place to create a Big Short issue in your opinion right now?
It's so hard to gauge, but what I can say is I don't pay, obviously, the sum of the press is accurate, but there's a huge amount of press, and especially for all the entertainment clients I've worked with and all the entertainment people I know, a huge amount of press is just like negative fake news. So
Mhm.
I can only deal with my experience and what I'm
Mhm.
seeing. And as I'm telling you, we're really active. We're selling probably this year the most we've ever sold. We're working in many markets. So like I said, we have a unique perspective, and I don't foresee right now. Of course, I don't. Obviously, there's no way to know,
Mhm.
like a massive Big Short type of situation. I think the Fed and the banks have been very cautious on lending.
Mhm. If you were going to give advice to someone who said, I watched this interview, I want to be Carl Gambino in my next iteration of life. He really inspires me. What would you tell them?
Depending
Excuse
what
me.
industry they wanted to be in, but if they wanted to be in real estate or sales, I would tell them to just do exactly what I did. Like I have certain books that I can recommend to people that I read on a daily basis that help me with that process. Like I said, of kind of going to the gym for your mind. I would sit down immediately and thoroughly write out your goals, like very detailed, knowing exactly what you want, and challenge yourself, even if when you're writing them out you think they're absurd or unachievable. Because I could tell you, I was a dog walker and reading this stuff out loud, I was literally thought it was like laughable picking up dog shit.
Mhm.
And so I do that, and I would start to surround myself with positive, constructive people. I would take positive, constructive action, and I would go out and meet as many people as possible.
That's a great list for success, for sure. What would you tell them to avoid?
One of the most one of the most important things for me is, who I surround myself with, and
Mhm.
avoiding negative, toxic people or anyone that could have negative influence on you. And sometimes that's really difficult. Sometimes they're relationships you've dealt with for many, many years and you don't even realize it. But to me, you are who you surround yourself with. You are for like what you intake. That's why I'm so obsessed with listening to positive, constructive material on a daily basis. So that's another factor.
Do you watch the news?
Very selectively.
Mhm.
Like I read news, I read real estate news, which can also be super negative. I
Mhm.
read kind of as much positive news as possible. I'm obsessed with art. I've built an
Mhm.
incredible art collection. I can't stop buying art. My wife wants to kill me, but she also loves art, but I can't stop. Um, so I read a lot of art news. That's something that I do spend time doing. Like I spend a lot of time like learning who the artists are, learning who the emerging artists are. But I'm trying not to read, like CNN or anything that could spiral me negatively.
Are you buying art because you view it as another asset like real estate, or are you buying art for pure pleasure or a combo?
I buy art because I love it, and it's something that like when you're a real collector, I believe it's something like you're compelled to do, where you just like I buy art sometimes that is huge and I have no idea what I'm going to do with it because I just can't not do it. But of course, like when I'm buying it, I'm hoping that I'm making a smart investment and it's an asset class. But I don't, I own overall probably 100 and something works at this point. I think I've only sold one painting. It was just something I bought that I didn't love
Mhm.
or things changed. So primarily I'm buying it because I love it and I love living with art and I know it makes life better.
Is there a particular artist you like, or do you encourage the art of young budding artists, or is there a theme?
Mostly what I buy is emerging younger artists, but I have a variation. Like I'm obsessed with David Hockney. I bought an
Mhm.
iPad drawing from Pace. I love Hockney. He's like one of my favorite living artists. But yeah, there's so many incredible young emerging artists all over the world that I buy and support. And one thing I love to do is but obviously it's subjective, and my friends who are collectors buy what they love as well. But I like to buy an artist and show it to all of my friends, and pretty often they'll buy it as well and help the artist's career, and that's like a really great thing.
Do you go in and stage properties you're trying to sell with your artwork?
I'm a little bit scared to do that, but yes, like there's a developer I'm working with now who's awesome. His company is like one of the top developers in Brooklyn. It's called Ekstrom, and we're talking about a few like higher end developments that we're working on, staging it with some of the art we own.
Very cool. Carl, the time for these interviews always goes too fast. So, what would be parting words for this audience? I have a feeling you have a lot of good parting words of inspiration.
I just that I hope what I said was helpful, and anyone can reach out to me either on Instagram or email, and I'm happy to share the books I mentioned or, what I do on a daily basis.
Well, I want to really thank you, everyone. This has been the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. And my guest today has been Carl Gambino. And he heads up the Gambino team in real estate. And I mean, this has just been a wealth of information in inspiration, information, and more. So I really want to thank you. There will be all kinds of ways you can get in touch with Carl below. So please hit subscribe. Do follow what he's doing on social media because he's clearly all over the place in a lot of different pockets of the country with a lot of interesting people and sharing great information for those who want to learn about real estate, be involved with it, buy some, sell some, and more. Thank you, Carl. We're going to
Thank
move over
you.
to the green room.
Thank you.